My name is Ellen Greenwood, or as I appear in the order of service, Ellen Moss Greenwood. That's my maiden name, which has now made it into the order of service. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm very happy to get to be the worship associate for this service today. I want to welcome each one of you to Westside, whether you are here with us in person or whether you are watching this service and joining us from the comfort of your home by YouTube. You are very welcome here. Westside is a congregation that welcomes you regardless of who you are, regardless of what you believe, as long as you are willing to join with us in an honest and responsible search for meaning in our lives. We are very happy to have you. Our minister, the Reverend Carol Baudot, is not with us today, and so if you happen to be new here and you haven't had a chance to meet her, I hope that you will come back and get acquainted with her and hear her speak. But we have a wonderful tradition here at Westside of lay-led services, and this morning, Mary Frances Milligan is going to speak with us. You know, I think that each one of us has a story to tell, maybe many stories. And some of our stories, you know, some of us may have more interesting stories than others, but we all have stories, and we need to tell them to each other, and we need to listen to each other. And I think that's a lot of what being together in community means, is telling our stories and listening to those stories. So that's what we're going to do today. We do have announcements. There are announcements here in your order of service. If you're with us here in person, be sure you read all of those. I'm not going to read them to you, but please do that. And if you are seeing this on YouTube, I believe our announcements are there on your screen for you. We do have one announcement that Linda Phippen would like to make.
I just want to put a plug in for the Arts and Crafts group, which is moving back to Saturdays this month, or the month of May, so it will be next Saturday, the 6th, and it'll be at noon, and I'm going to bring some leaves and some watercolor paints and do leaf prints. If anybody is interested in joining, I'll bring some extra stuff if you want to play along, so thanks.
I don't consider myself an artistic person, but that sounds like fun. For our gathering song this morning, we are going to sing number 1003. You have it there in your Teal hymnal. Where do we come from? I think that's part of what we explore as we talk about and listen to our stories of where we've been and where we are going and what might happen. So the way we're going to do this, the choir is going to sing this through one time for you. You'll notice that each line repeats one time. We'll go through it once, and then we invite you to join us when we go through the song the second time. So number 1003.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do
And now we have an opening reading by Mary Frances Milligan.
Ang. Hello, my name is Mary Frances Milligan, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And just so you guys know, today we are talking about some of my family's Native Alaskan culture, and we have integrated that into the service. So if you are wondering what is going on, what is she talking about, and that's why, and we'll be talking about it through the rest of the day. So today's opening reading is a selection from Pigs in Heaven, a novel by Barbara Kingsolver. I know that she's popular. And the general plot of this particular book is about family and what the family means. A young woman named Taylor has adopted a Cherokee girl, and her name's Turtle. And a lawyer from the Cherokee Nation, she sees her on TV, and there is the Indian Child Welfare Act, and realizes that, maybe Turtle needs to be in touch with her tribe, and maybe she would be better there. It's a conversation. So this is a conversation between Taylor and the attorney, Anna Wake. Turtle is Cherokee. She needs to know that. She knows it. Does she know what it means? Do you? I'll bet she sees Indians on TV and thinks, how? Bows and arrows. That isn't what we are. We have a written language as subtle as Chinese. We have the first free public school system in the world. Did you know that? We have a constitution and laws. Look, I'm sure you're a good mother. I can tell that. You seem to care a lot about her. But she needs her tribe, too. There are a lot of things she'll need growing up that you can't give her. Like what? Where she comes from, who she is, big things and the little things too. All right, and now I'm going to invite the singing bowl to sound. This is a tradition here at Westside. This is the first time I've ever done this, so you guys have to support me in my ability to invite it to ring. So invite it to for me so we can all think about this thing, because I really have performance anxiety about ringing this bowl here, so. Ooh, I got to touch it. Okay, so do I just, okay.
Keep going.
I'm going to go. All right. I don't want to hit it.
It takes a while to build up the sound. Just keep going.
But sometimes a little tap is okay.
Ooh. Keep going. Maybe you want people to hear you. I've really wanted to do that for a long time, so thank you. Lennon, are you ready to do this? Okay, so I've invited my youngest son, Lennon. He is going to light the chalice. All right, and while we do that, I'm going to read a traditional Unangax blessing. The way of our... Oh, okay, well, it's going to get lit. The way of our beginning, our ancestors, our people's land, oh, hold on a second, Lennon, honey? Oh, okay, you're doing it. The way of our beginning, our ancestors, our people's land and sea around here. Believe in them and keep them going through time for the coming generations that we don't see yet for their time here. Thank you. You did a good job. All right, and so next we are going to do a story of all ages. I don't see any younger ones here, but if you are young and I missed you, or if you're young at heart or just like to sit up front, by all means, I invite you to come. All right. Oh. I got my chair on here. I'm excited. Oh, Howard. There's two of them, and I only saw one. Okay, so today we are going to read a story. It's called Benny's Flag, and it is about a Unangax boy, and he comes from a village, St. George Island, I believe, but he comes from a village in the same island chain as my kids, and he is part of the same tribe. And this is by Phyllis Krolowski, and the illustrations are by Jim Fowler. Benny's Flag. All right. Benny was an Aleut boy who lived in Alaska many years before it became a state. He had straight black hair and bright black eyes. But best of all, he had a happy, friendly smile. There's Benny. He's up in a tree. He had many, many friends in the mission home where he lived. The children ate together in a big dining room. They slept in big rooms called dormitories, which had many beds in them. And in the winter, they all went to the same school that other children in the village attended. There's Benny with some of the other Unangax boys there in the dormitory. Benny was happy in the mission home, but sometimes before he went to sleep at night, he would gaze at the stars outside his dormitory window and long for the day when he would be a grown-up man. He was going to be a fine fisherman. He would use a net like the Big Dipper in the sky to catch splendid silver salmon. Benny would be strong like the Great Bear, a larger group of stars which the Big Dipper was a part of. Like the great strong bear of night, Benny would be strong himself. And there he is wrestling with some of the boys in his dorm. I'm not saying a bunch of boys roughhouse together, but that's what's happening here. The North Star would guide his boat. Benny knew that when Alaska became a state someday, it would be the northernmost state in the United States. Sometimes, when the sky was scattered with hundreds of stars, it reminded Benny of a field of forget-me-nots, the little blue star-shaped flowers that grew wild everywhere. The blue sky was a roof that covered Benny's Alaska at night. And there he is looking out the window at night. You see all the trees in the sky. One really interesting thing about Alaska, this isn't part of the book, this is me talking, is that during certain times of the year, at night around Christmas time or winter solstice, it's dark all the time. And then in the summer, summer solstice in June, it doesn't get dark. And Benny starts to see things outlined by stars. Here's a little hoot owl. There's some birds stealing something from a picnic. And he sees them in stars too. In the summertime, when only the mountaintops were still covered with snow, Benny enjoyed himself on picnics with the other mission children. Sometimes he went swimming too, though the water was often cold. And it was really cold. Don't try this. There he is swimming there. Oh, and there's a salmon being caught. One lucky day, a kind fisherman took Benny fishing with him in his boat. Almost at once, Benny caught a big salmon all by himself. It was so big that there was enough for everyone at the mission house to eat for supper, and everyone said it was delicious. Benny was so happy he could hardly sleep that night. He lay awake looking at the stars, dreaming his dream of becoming a real fisherman. There he is in the snow, and he's seeing his friends in the stars again. When fall came, school started again, just as it does for children everywhere. But the winter came quickly. The first snowy day, Benny went to school wearing a parka, mucklucks, which are fur-lined boots, and thick mittens to keep his fingers warm. He looked like a furry bear more than a boy. As he walked along the snow-covered road, he wondered if all the little blue forget-me-not flowers that covered the fields in summer were now growing under the earth. In the cold winter, sunshine of the world was all white and twinkly snow. The salmon were gone. The fishing boats, anchored near the beach, looked like a fleet of ghost ships. And here's Benny at school, and it's really cold, and he walked through the snow, and all of his stuff got wet, so I was sitting there by the stove to get warm and dry. That day in school, the teacher told the children that there was a contest to make a flag for Alaska. With all his heart, Benny wanted to win the flag contest. He thought how grand it would be to see his flag carried in a parade or hung on the masts of the big ships that came to the village in the summertime. He thought how especially grand it would be to see his flag flying on the fishing boat he would have one day. And here's that's his teacher. And here's some of his classmates drawing. And of course, he sees it all in stars. That night, the boys and girls at the mission house collected crayons, paint, and paper, and made many, many designs for the flag. They sat around a big table, and as they worked, they talked and laughed, and sometimes held up their designs for the others to see. But Benny sat quietly, thinking and thinking. For once, no one could see his happy, friendly smile. He was thinking about what he loved most about Alaska. He loved bunnies of the night sky. Suddenly, Benny knew what he wanted his flag to be like. He wanted his flag to be like the stars he dreamed by, gold stars spread out like the Big Dipper in the blue sky. So that is what he painted. And underneath it, he wrote these words. There's Benny at the night sky looking up at the stars. The blue field is for the sky, and the forget-me-not, an Alaskan flower. The North Star is for the future state of Alaska, the most northerly of the Union. The Dipper is for the Great Bear, symbolizing strength. There are the other kids showing off their flags. Some of the children drew pictures of the beautiful snow-covered mountains in Alaska. Some drew pictures of the big fish that can be caught in Alaska. Some drew pictures of the northern lights that sometimes cross the sky. Some drew pictures of the Alaskan forest. Some drew pictures of the Alaskan rivers. And some drew star designs, or stripe designs, or flower designs. They're all showing their flags off. Benny didn't show his paper to anyone. He was too shy. He thought the other children's designs were much better than his. Still, the next day he gave his paper to the teacher when she collected the others. A month went by, and the teacher didn't mention the contest again. Benny ice skated with the other children, and so winter went quickly by. They played ice hockey, too. And we see the seasons change. And suddenly, the snow and ice began to melt. Benny no longer wore his parka and mucklucks and mittens. He began to watch for the forget-me-nots in the drying fields as he walked to school. He watched the fishermen mend their nets for the coming fishing season. He watched the world change from white to green. He's looking out the window and seeing the birds. Then, one day, when school was almost over, the teacher called the children together. "Children," she said, "the flag contest is ended." From all over Alaska, boys and girls sent in designs for the flag. From northern Nome to busy cities of Anchorage and Fairbanks, from fishing towns of Seward and Petersburg to Juneau, the capital, and lumber town of Txin, from everywhere came hundreds of designs. And why are they patting Benny on the back? Why do you think they are? He won, that's right. Out of all the people in Alaska, a Unangax boy from a fishing village won the Alaskan state flag contest. And boys and girls, Benny's design has won the contest. And from now on, Benny's design will be Alaska's flag. What a proud and happy boy Benny was. And what an especially proud and happy boy he was on the 4th of July. For on that day in the village, a big parade celebrated the holiday. Everyone came to see the marchers in their bright uniforms, the baton twirlers, the banners, but the very first thing they saw was Benny. Benny marching at the head of the parade, carrying the flag he made for Alaska. There's Benny with his flag with a marching band behind him. This is a true story, and you can draw your own flag too.
I love that story. Thank you very much. I should tell Mary Frances that I think almost all of us who are worship associates have quite a bit of performance anxiety about ringing that bowl. We're always hoping someone else will want to ring it or invite it to sing, as I should say. But we love it, but we feel a little anxious about what we'll do. In just a few minutes, we're going to take an offering for the support of this congregation, the work that it does both here and in our outer community. Our Share the Plate partner this month this quarter is Worthy Now Prison Ministry Network, and you can read more about that in your order of service, and I think you can find that on your website. And I believe if you're watching us from home, there is a link there also where you can donate. Before we start, though, our offertory is going to be some traditional music that Mary Frances is going to tell us just a little bit about. So let's start actually passing the plate when the music starts.
Okay, yes, so the music that you're going to hear is a recording that I made. It was made last summer at the Aleutian People of Island Association's Cultural Camp and Picnic, and this is a live performance of Unangax Natives. It's a traditional song, and there's a dance that I'm not going to show you because it's got people's kids in it. I don't want to share that, but the song is actually a good luck song before a hunt goes out in kayaks, and so it's a blessing, may we bless our tribe members, we may bless our hunters, may we bless the sea and the animals we're looking for. And it's a happy occasion. So just so you know, there's a lot of drums, chanting. It's a little different if you're used to, say, Cherokee or more local tribes. And so the Alaskans, a little different sound. I hope you guys find it interesting. And there's a loud woo at the end, and that is me. So just so you know. right, so thank you. All right. Oh, okay. So has anyone here ever done one of those ancestry DNA tests before? Okay, I did. I sent him a vial of my spit. I thought it was really exciting. You know, swab my nose. Actually, no, you swab your mouth. Has anyone ever done like genealogy work and traced their family tree? Yeah, okay, so it's a popular activity. I personally find it fascinating. And I've done 2 DNA tests, and I was really hoping to find a dark family secret. I was really hoping. I really was. But I have to inform you, I come from a long line of boring white people. There was the spiciest thing that I could find was that my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather dropped the E from Milligan and made it Milligan when he crossed, the Atlantic Ocean to North America. I've got heavily involved, and I traced my dad's family to Dumfries, Scotland, and my mom's family to Derry or Londonderry, Northern Ireland. So I thought that was very exciting. And you know what? Even though I didn't find the deep secret that I was hoping for, I think I'd be cool with it. It was still really nice to know where I come from. I can look up my family tartan. I can point to a map and say that's where my family's from. I know our family shield. I know when they came. I can go to Monroe County, I can go down the road to Von Orr, and I can see the sites that aren't under a lake that my ancestors worked. I can see our family farm. I can go to a small Methodist church and see where my ancestors are buried. I think that's really neat, and I think it's really fulfilling. That's why we do these things, to find out where we come from. But not everyone has that luxury. If you've read The Cooking Gene by Michael W. Twitty, he's a black man who talks about trying to find his genealogy. And unfortunately, what his record showed is he had to go and hope your ancestor showed up on a bill of sale to find out where he came from. It was hard work. And what about adopted? What about adoption? I'm not, in case you did not know, it's not a secret, I'm not my kid's biological mother. When I had to fill out all those medical history forms, and there's a lot of them if you have kids, I frequently have to make a best guess or leave things blank or unknown, just because I don't know. I don't have a way to know. But not only that, my kids have a different heritage than me. They are registered members of the Unangax tribe of Nikolsky. If you don't know what that means, we'll talk about that. But in short, they're Native Alaskans. Now, I am not an expert on Native Alaskans, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. There are a lot of better resources, and I'll mention some. If you want to find out about Alaska Natives, I can point you that way. But I'm going to do my best to give a primer on it, and more particularly the Unangax. I brought visual aids. Star, you want to come up and be my button pusher? I should have fired this up while we're listening to a song. Brad told me. I didn't think, I thought it'd be okay. Hold on a second. So while that pulls up, it's going to pull up there we go, a map of Alaska. So Alaska itself is massive. It is 663,300 square miles. It's nearly 2 times the size of Texas. So it would make sense that the native people who live there have great and varied cultures. Before we break this down, though, I want to clear up some popular misconceptions. First of all, Native Alaskans are not Eskimos. In fact, don't use that word, time out. It's considered a slur. So it's not cool anymore. It probably was never cool. It was invented to mean those who eat raw meat, and particularly raw fish. And that's the way that the Russians used to look down on the natives they met. Second of all, most Native Alaskans are not considered Inuit. Sometimes a lot of people are like, well, I won't use Eskimo, I'll use Inuit. Still not quite right. So Inuit usually describes native Arctic culture spanning Canada through Greenland. So there are a few, here. That kind of orange part, that is some Native Inuit culture, and we will talk about that. But third, I want to go ahead and say Native Alaskans don't live in igloos. Never did. So just get that out of your mind. And I'm just saying this because these are things I thought. So, it's okay if you did. You don't know. It's not like no one had ever pulled up a native culture map of Alaska, probably until today. In fact, the only time you'll probably see an igloo in Alaska is if you're at a luxury resort near Fairbanks and they're trying to sell you or rent out a luxury igloo to watch the northern lights in. Wonderful experience, but not traditional. So, I think I will grab the mobile mic so I can walk and talk. All right, so we are going to start with the Inupiat right here, and their native lands are here in the orange section. And if you've been wanting to say Inuit, you have my permission here. It's fine. They share Inuit culture with people stretching the Arctic band, and so if you want to think about the Arctic Circle, it goes through there. They are considered some of the first communities to be impacted by climate change. Thinning ice has made it more difficult to hunt, and erosion along the coast has impacted several fishing villages. Next, we're going to move down the western coast. Right here in yellow are the coastal lands, are the lands of the Yupik. The Yupik are the most populous of the Native American tribes, or pardon me, Native Alaskan tribes. If you pay attention to national politics, Mary Peltola, who is Alaska's member of the House of Representatives, is Yupik. I think that's really exciting. They only get one, and they chose a Native Alaskan. They share many cultural elements with the native people of Russian Siberia. And we'll be looking at the picture in a minute, but if we think about the Bering Land Bridge, that many people came through, the native peoples of Native America came through, it connected Russia and Alaska. So a lot of the native cultures in Alaska do share elements with native Russian or Siberian culture. Many of the Yupik like to spend summer on the coast in fishing villages and move to interiors during larger settlements during the winter, because in case you did not know, it gets very cold in Alaska during the winter. And the Yupik are the same culture, but their lands are just a little more inside. So then we're going to move on to the Athabascans. Their land is right here in the red. It goes all the way from Anchorage in Cook Inlet all the way up into Alaska. And so if you've been to Alaska and you've actually been on the land and not just taken a cruise, you're actually most likely on Athabascan land. That's the most accessible part. So if you've gone from Anchorage to Denali all the way up, that's Athabascan land. The Athabascans were naturally nomads. If you watch the National Geographic show Life Below Zero, the majority of the cast is Athabascan. And I think they have two Yupik. The Athabascans call themselves the Dene, and that means the people. And something interesting is that in a lot of native cultures, most native tribes, or many native tribes, actually call themselves a variation of the people. And not only that, the Athabascans share a native line with the Navajo. And so if we think about that, I think that's really fascinating that it's the same group. I don't have a whole North America map that came from this red area all the way down to southwest North America. And then we're going to go ahead and look at the green area. There are 4 different tribes that are associated with them. The largest is the Tlingit. And this is if you've been to Juneau or taken a glacier cruise, this is probably where you were. And so those particular tribes are, I'd say, are most common or most familiar to the Pacific Northwest tribe, is that you may have learned about in school. And then we're going to go over to the southern region here. We're getting into the purple. I'm saving the best for last here. But right here is the Supiaq people. And they are primarily along the Kenai Peninsula. So if you've ever been to Kenai Fords National Park, this is their home, as well as Kodiak Island, which, in case you were curious, yes, actually has the world's largest population of Kodiak bears. They are primarily fishers who live on salmon, halibut, and whale. And this finally brings us to the Unana. And before we go any further, I'm going to come up with some nomenclature clarification. So the Unana live right here, this purple chain. If you think about the way I'd always describe it, as Alaska as a hand is like this, the thumb are the Aleutian Islands. And I'm sorry, I just touched the TV. And so the islands themselves are the Aleutian Islands. The people who live there are the Unana. So a lot of times you will hear the term Aleutian. When I use it, it's because I'm actually talking about the land itself. However, a lot of people will actually call the Unana Aleutians. It's just because they live there. And that's the term that the Russians use for them. But Unana is what they call themselves. So I try to use the preferred name. And I'll talk about how I didn't always know that. And so a lot of this I'm going to talk about is my own journey of learning things. And saying it's okay to know and be better. There are parts of the Aleutians that are closer to Russia than Alaska, and they're primarily fishing people known for fishing and hunting marine animals and kayaks. Oh gosh, I messed up my slides. Okay. Well, let's go ahead. Starry, why don't you go ahead and press the button. All right, so in a minute we're going to talk about Nikolsky. And Nikolsky, right here, where the pen is where my children's ancestral home is. All right, go ahead and, I got it. See? All right, this is actually the village there. And that's the aerial view. And so they come all the way from over there. I think it's really fascinating. We'll talk some more about that. So the Unana, see, now I'm back on my track here. They're primarily fishing people known for fishing and hunting marine animals and kayaks. So who here has ever seen the TV show The Deadliest Catch, or at least heard of it? Okay, yeah, a lot of people have. And so, you see rugged seamen and women going all across these horrible, choppy waters. And they're being pitched, and oh gosh, aren't they just so daring? You know who did it first? The Unana hunted those same waters in kayaks. And so that's what I was like, I'm just hats off. And the TV show is actually filmed in Lee's Unana waters. And so the kayaks were made with either walrus or sea lion skin, and the fishing in kayaks was a large part of the culture. So next picture, Starry. All right. So another part of, then we're going to talk a little bit about regalia here, are about these bent wood visors. So if you're wondering, like, why is this guy wearing a hat? It's not because it looks cool, even though it does. Is that seals are actually smart creatures, and they started to recognize that the Unana were out in their kayaks and ready to fish, and they saw them as friendly. And so the Unana decided to go ahead and they started crafting these visors that cover their faces. And so when they bent down to hunt, the seals couldn't see their faces. And it worked, and they've been doing this for thousands of years now. And so it's a really exciting thing, and now they paint them, and it's part of their ceremonial regalia. And go ahead and start, you can have the next one. All right, and so I wanted to go ahead and include pictures of ladies too, because I don't want to talk about just the guys. So traditionally, and as I said, a lot of people don't really think about this is how Native Alaskans dress, but they do. Let me say, this is a living culture. And so, I mean, this is the traditional regalia, but there are Unana out there. Most of them live in Anchorage, and a lot of them will just, wear normal clothes, but this is their ceremonial outfits. And they're usually waterproof parkas made from seal or lion guts. And Starry, go ahead and move to the next one. Okay, and tribes and villages lived in large subterranean homes, sometimes the size of several football fields. And the only way you could get to and from them was a hole in the ground. And to go in and out, you had to go up and down a ladder. So people had to go up and down the ladder, and traditional dance and song consisted of drums, but public performances of dance stopped when Russian contact was made. All right. First outside contact of the Unana were with the Russians in 1741. Many Russian Orthodox churches were established, and Russian Orthodoxy is still the dominant religion in the islands today. The Unangax were such skilled sea hunters, there was a high demand for the pelts they collected. In 1784, the Unangax rebelled against Russian traders and started to jail them from island to island. Again, they came up with a group and they just sailed from island to island on their kayaks and ran up the Russians and put them to jail. While you may think that's really cool, that sounds like a success, well, one thing they were not prepared for is that the Russians brought diseases that the Unangax never experienced before or been in contact with. And within 2 decades of first contact, 80% of the Unangax population had died. In 1867, the U.S. bought Alaska from Russia, including the Aleutian Islands. They established additional missions and orphanages, like in the story, and became home to a large portion of the U.S. revenue cutters, which were the precursor to the U.S. Coast Guard. So we talked about a little bit about Nikolsky, because I put my slides in the wrong order. It's on Unangax Island. Unangax is part of a group called the Fox Islands. In 1942, the Japanese attacked the western part of the Aleutian Islands. Sorry. In response, between July 12th and July 26th, 1942, the U.S. government removed hundreds, if not thousands, of Unangax from their homes and interned them in Anchorage. This is where the lack of records makes it hard, but I believe that the boys' great-grandparents were among those who were removed. The conditions in the duration camps were inhumane by all accounts. There were rotten floors, only one toilet for hundreds of residents, and dirty water. They were described as crowded, dark, and unheated. Tuberculosis, the flu, and measles ran rampant. They were usually in old canneries or warehouses, and 1 out of 5 people died. While the Aleutian Islands were deemed safe to return to back in 1945, most simply did not have the means to return to their home islands. Those who did not come back, or those who did come back, came back to their homes ransacked and in shambles. Today, only 27 people still live in Nikolsky. The majority of the people of the Unangax now live in Anchorage. What we do know is that the boy's biological grandmother was born in Anchorage in 1952. For lack of a better word, she was kidnapped at age 2 and adopted to a white family in Tennessee. These events led to generational trauma that in part led the boys to live with me. When you become a foster parent in Tennessee, you have to go through a lot of classes before you can get approved. And one of them, and I actually heard that our great state has canceled this, but at my time, which was many years ago, one of them was on cultural diversity. It emphasized, even if you don't share the same culture as your child, you need to make it part of your lives and honor it. The adoption advocate, in a passage written by Ebony Mack and Kristen Hamilton, states, "The decision to become a parent often brings with it one of life's greatest jobs and carries with it a whole host of commitments and responsibilities to provide for the many needs that children have, from food, shelter, and clothing to healthcare, education, and much more. And choosing to pursue the privilege of growing one's family through adoption, adoptive parents are committing themselves to the responsibility of understanding and addressing the issues and needs specific to adoption, which can include loss, grief, identity formation, maintaining birth-family connections, accessing health history, information, and more. There's even more added responsibility in addressing the issues, privileges, and challenges that arise when adopting a child of a different race. In these situations, adoptive parents have the obligation to develop and build a family and wider community that promotes a strong and enriched racial identity, that understands and responds to racism, and that proactively and age-appropriately prepares, educates, and protects their children from racial inequality, racial discrimination, and all other forms of racism. Additionally, these parents must not only work through the challenge of raising a child in a society where racism exists, they also have the privilege and responsibility of learning, promoting, and participating in the child's racial heritage and grafting that heritage into the family." So, in case you don't know me very well, I'm a very enthusiastic person, and I took all this very much to heart. Now, this was many years ago when the kids were little kids. Starry is about to graduate high school now. I didn't understand the nuances of the different cultures within Alaska Natives at times, so I did my best. I showed the boys pictures of igloos and polar bears. They scrunched up their faces. They were like, "What's this? Why are you showing me this? I don't know. Let's go to Dollywood." I was like, okay, these kids are East Tennessean. I'm not going to worry about all this right now. we're good. And I didn't, honestly, I had a lot of stuff going on. And they were growing up. I didn't even, really emphasize it again for a few years. However, I started to get curious. I decided I was going to find other Native Alaskans. You know how much luck I had in East Tennessee? 0. In fact, when I filled out my census form in 2020, I am fairly sure we are the largest concentration of Native Alaskans in Tennessee. I decided to do what I could was the best, and we started to visit a lot of Cherokee sites, did a lot of events with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, because it was the closest. But it wasn't, I felt like, enough. And so, again, this is more me driven. This isn't the kids driven. This is Mom driving the show here. And I started to research and found a great opportunity for the kids. In Anchorage, the Aleutian Pribilof Islands Association hosts an urban culture camp, a camp for Unangax youth who don't live on islands to be connected to their culture. In fact, if they had no connection, it was okay. This is the whole setup for them to go and have that experience. And I was like, this is it. This is awesome. We're going to go. And we were all set to go in 2020. Until, something happened in 2020 that we could not do it. Our plans were canceled. And while we were grounded for a few years, I used that time to research more and more about the Unangax culture and history. That's when I started learning about all this stuff. I was like, oh, I was so wrong. Unfortunately, there just isn't a whole lot written about the culture. I mean, if you go to the Knox County Library, there's no resources. What I actually found the most rewarding was finding many Native Alaskans on Instagram and following them. And that really put me in touch with the culture and knowing what they're doing. And so I got to order all the cool stuff they make too. And following them and learning more about their crafts and way of life was a connection for me. In 2022, Culture Camp resumed. I knew we had to go. And I'll be honest, I was more excited than the kids, who look so excited right now. They knew they were Aleutian. May I say, I did not know until I got there to Anchorage that it was supposed to be Unangax, but it really seemed to be more abstract. I was told that due to large interest, registration was restricted to registered tribal members. Well, I thought that was cool. I'm sure I could hang out and float around and learn by observation. I was stoked. I'm going to learn so much. So are the kids. The boys and I flew to Anchorage and did a few days exploring Alaska before Culture Camp. We went to Kenai Fords National Park and took a glacier cruise. We hiked to a glacier, saw pods of killer whales, seals, and sea lions, and all the puffins. And then we drove up to the interior of Denali, and it was too cloudy. We did not get to see the highest peak in North America. But we had a magical time exploring and had some of the best Jamaican food I've ever had. In Cantwell, Alaska, who knew? It's there. Jams. Anyway, if you're ever there, go. Then we made the trek back to Anchorage for Culture Camp, and I finally saw a moose. I was so happy. Those things can run, in case you didn't know. They had a race with us down the highway. So we got to the camp, and it was at the Aleutian Pribilof Association's headquarters there in Anchorage. And I signed them in, and the kids were quickly sorted into their different classes to make kayaks, learn traditional dances, and construct drums. And I was just left hanging out in the lobby. All the parents just left. I guess they had other things to do. I read a whole book that first afternoon while hanging around. While I was certainly welcome to hang out, so they didn't kick me out, I came to the realization that this was not about me. This was as far as I went in this journey. It was my job as my kids' parent to make sure they got there, and they had to take the next steps on their own. For the following 5 days, I would take the kids to their camp, drop them off, and then I'd go on my own adventures. Let me tell you this, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I work a full-time job, I drive a taxi service for my children after my job, so I don't get a lot of time to myself, and I found that really exciting. I explored downtown Anchorage, had a veggie reindeer dog, visited the oldest home in Anchorage, went to the botanical gardens, took hikes, and one day I just went and took a nap. While the kids learned about their culture, I got to get in touch with myself too. And those were some of the most rewarding days I've had in a long time. I also took time to do my own research about the Unangax while I was in Alaska. At a time, I bought a cookbook of traditional Unangax dishes. If you guys follow me on social media, you may know that I love to cook, and I'm one of those people that I truly believe that food is what unites us all. Everyone can come around some good food and understand each other's culture. I actually think that's one of the best ways to learn about someone's culture is to eat their food. Well, I opened up this cookbook. I was so excited. But as I flipped through 97 pages of seal recipes, I knew this was just not something I could do. I've been a vegetarian for 28 years. So I had to understand that's part of their culture, but it was not part of mine. However, I did find a few berry desserts. I could make those. I was okay about that. On our next to last night in Alaska, Mozart shared with me that he met someone else from Nikolsky. Like, there's not a lot. That's pretty cool. This person was probably even a long-lost cousin. He's hiding. Before we went to culture camp, he confided in me that he was a little bit nervous about going. While all three of my kids, I feel if you look at them, you can see they're Native Alaskan. But Mozart, he's got a fiery top of hair. Some of that Scottish culture's coming through, or his heritage. And he felt like he was not going to fit in. And he said, guess what? This kid told me. There are a lot of other redheads on our island. And he had a big smile on his face while he was sewing a headdress. My heart grew big, and I knew that I made the right decision taking the kids to Alaska. The trip was a success for all of us, but it brought me to a new realization as a part of our multicultural family. We don't have to be the same to be a family. We're some of our parts. Just because the kids are Unana, I don't have to pretend to be one myself. Striking you? I just have to make sure they have the proper access to learn and experience that side of themselves. Then it's my job to support them however they want to explore that further. Nor will I ever force all of my background on them or force their background out of them. And I'm happy to share whatever they want. That's what strong families do. We respect each other and give each other opportunities to grow. We can even say that is part of being a congressional family as well. We all recognize that each one of us is different, and we don't all have to be the same, but coming together, we're stronger and we're family. Before we caught our flight back to Knoxville, we attended the annual Aleutian Islanders picnic. I watched Mozart perform traditional dances, and I just smiled and sat back while I watched the kids play. I knew that we were on to something good. All right, and so I'm going to end off with a little bit of Unana. You guys can repeat after me if you want to try. Tuman. Tuman. That means us. Txin. That means me. And Txin. That means you. And so, you, me, us, we're family. All right, and then, I don't know if Ellen wants to introduce this or not, but we have one last song.
Thank you so much, Mary Frances. And thank you guys for allowing your mom to share your story with us. It means a lot to us to hear these stories. And we're going to close by singing number 1059, May Your Life Be as a Song. The choir is going to sing through it one time, and then we will ask all of you to join us on the second time. Unless you just couldn't resist and you're singing the first time, that's good too.
May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing away the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing away the light and softly serenade the stars.
to say thank you to the choir. I get excited hearing them sing. I think that's awesome. And I also wanted to say thank you for Ellen for being the worship associate today. This is my first time doing a full service, and she was awesome to work with. And thank you all for coming out here. Thank you for Brad for helping me figure out how to do the TV. And it's been a great day. So it is in with this Westside tradition, if you feel so moved at the end of our service, to stand up and join hands. If you don't feel moved, that's okay too. I'm not about forced contact. Oh gosh, I'm part of the circle. Okay. I also want to say thank you to my kids. I asked their permission if it was okay to talk about them, and they said yes. So I know that's pretty awesome. All right. May we go today and think how we can honor those who are different than us, especially those within our care. May we think of opportunities we can give them that let them explore themselves, even if we're not part of it. May we do everything with love. Go with peace. Go with love. Smote it be. Blessed be. Bishay. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.